Well, welcome back to nGRND's channel, the future of sustainable investment. Joining to provide some updates, webinars, competitive advantage, and more. We've got Lisa Wilson, the CEO, back as always. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Carl. Good to be back. I think we're starting to be a regular.
Yeah, always a pleasure to get you back on here. So you're doing a Kerr's Explain, basically a webinar with FCM and yourself. Maybe tell us about this webinar a little bit.
Yeah, on Thursday this week, at 1 p.m. British Standard Time, we're doing a webinar which is just called Kerr's Explain. So Kerr's is the name of the property that we've included in our first rights agreement with First Class Metals, between nGRND and First Class Metals. And of course, this webinar is basically so we can actually discuss and explain to the investors of First Class Metals really what that Web Zero asset means, and of course for First Class Metals and what it means for the long-term future for their investors, but also what it means in terms of us purchasing the preserved gold to take into the nGRND Gold Protocol token ecosystem. So it's a really exciting webinar. We're going to have Mark Sale, who is the CEO from First Class Metals, and also James Knowles, who's the executive director and chairman for First Class Metals, and myself, and we'll be primarily just introducing the agreement and discussing what it means for junior developers like First Class Metals to have engaged with us in this landmark agreement, and also answering predominantly questions from investors. So you can hop over to there's a link which will drop into the information, and people can register, and you can actually register questions prior to that. And so we'll be answering those questions in that webinar. So it really is an explainer so that we get an opportunity to really explain what this landmark agreement means and how important it is for both them and for us. And of course, it's the first time really for me in my career where we really are taking Web Zero assets and putting them in and placing them in an immersed important role within the Web3 space. So to support a utility token initially. So it's an exciting webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just for newer audiences as well, you want to talk a bit about your market position and what kind of competitive advantage this is giving nGRND?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, in-ground falls sort of perfectly, I suppose, with three powerful value distribution drivers, and it really sets in-ground apart compared to any of our competitors that are out there. There are others. Nat Gold is probably the closest that does have some ESG alignment. But we are completely, quite different to anybody that's out there. And I believe that our three things, the first is, of course, that we have our preserved gold. So we own the gold. It's preserved gold, it preserves the planet, but it's preserved in the ground. So it's in ground, verified, known mineral resources, not a mineral estimate, it's a mineral resource. So it actually does exist. And, I was having a discussion with some of the First Class Metals team and on an interview that we did yesterday for Agoracom. And one of the things we said was that 86% of gold that's above ground is stored or worn. And when it's stored for a store of value. We can have that same purpose enabled by leaving that gold in the ground as preserved gold. So we are preserving it in the ground, but we're also preserving its attributes as a store of value in the ground. And of course, it preserves the planet. So it's environmental stewardship. It means that we have the capacity to make sure that we don't damage the sites and so forth, but we still are working with the junior developers and the explorers to monetize their gold, which is, of course, one of the reasons we want to have the webinar. The second is that we're actually recognizing that we generate value distributions from measurable ESG and sustainability goals, initiatives, and activities. So, in other words, where instead of them being perceived, particularly in the mining world, as a cost and something that inhibits permitting and challenges around taking gold to extraction, we're saying, well, leave the gold in the ground and let's convert those things that you used to think were challenges into commercial opportunities. And those monetized attributes will form distributions that first of all, some goes back to the site owners like First Class Metals, but secondly, it supports our stake and rewards pool for our utility token environment. So it's real income, not token income, real income from a Web Zero asset doing actual good from ESG and sustainability goals, and its measured impact, and it's driving revenue into a utility token ecosystem. And that's great for our staking rewards and participants in that ecosystem. And I think the third thing is that ecosystem earns through participation. So the more that you participate in our in-ground gold protocol utility ecosystem, the more rewards you earn. And of course, within that ecosystem, we're encouraging things like we've got participation streams like gaming, we've got well-being, we've got impact, we've got learn, we've got governance, we've got refer, advocate. So we're actually encouraging what I call stickiness. In other words, we want our participants in the in-ground gold protocol to stay. We want them to participate more and more. And the more they participate, the more rewards points they earn, the more portion of the staking rewards pool that they earn. And that, of course, is coming from that Web Zero asset and its distributions and revenues. So it's a real point of difference that sets us aside. And for me, it's really exciting because if you look at it from the Web3 perspective, they very rarely get access to anything outside that Web3. Generally, they only receive rewards and distributions from that Web3 space. And generally it's in tokens. It might be in stable coins, but it's generally in tokens and other activities from within that Web3 space. And they're immersed in that space. We're not. It's almost like it's a hybrid world. We're actually connecting that real world environment of preserved gold, its potential appreciation over time, and of course, gold does appreciate. It's appreciated at 8% a year on year for 56 years. So we've got that, and that provides revenues, of course, for first class metals. But as well as that, we're doing something with the land, and part of that distribution puts money into the utility ecosystem. So there's some significant points of difference that's set us aside from any competitor that's out there. And I would also say, apart from all of that, it's one point that's really important is that we are about collaborating with our site program owners and bringing them into this world as well, this Web3 world. So there's a real collaboration here. We have to work with them as well. And that's why the webinar is super important, because what we're doing is not normal for them. This is a new paradigm. And they're sort of shaking their head going, well, we know gold and we know what it's worth, and we've done this for years and years and years, but they don't know what the potential of all these other things are. And of course, technology often underpins most of that. So, it is a great opportunity.
Well, on that, Lisa, I appreciate your time today. As we pass it off to the viewers, as always, we'd love to know what you think in that comment section. Consider subscribing for news and catalysts as it comes down the wire like this. Of course, we'll bring it to you here, and we'll leave the links in the description for you to explore it further. But on that, we look forward to catching you in the next one.